Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am working on week 14 in my Project Life album, and I'm using a whole bunch of printables from Nelly and Clem. So as well as the brand new springtime kit, I went through a bunch of my older kits from Nelly and Clem. So I've used Bookish, Happy Days, Label and Story Basics, Love is Love, What You Watching, Word Up, suffice it to say, I went through a whole bunch of my kits and printed out just a bunch of journaling cards. I've been testing out some new paper for my printables, and I ended up printing these on some Canon matte photo paper, and I love the quality of it, and so I couldn't stop really. I just kept printing until I had a bunch of cards to work with this week. I've used a few on here, I think the little pink hearts and the green striper from the spring kit, and then I printed out this 4x6, which is also from the springtime kit, and I had a little bit of an idea for altering this printable into a title card. You know me, not super huge on green, although see, I did pick out the 3x4 green stripe card. I thought that worked really nicely with the photos of me and my not spring roses. These are my very, very late summer roses. This particular rose always blooms very late in the season. They're super huge blooms, and so it worked nicely with the springtime kit, despite the fact that we are at the complete opposite end of springtime. So I've gone ahead and cut this 4x6 card into strips, because what I'm going to do is fussy cut out all of these little yellow scallops, and I'm not going to make you watch me do that. So by the power of editing, here I go, I've got all of my little strips cut out. All I'm intending to do is use these little yellow scallops, not even the blue ones. So I'm going to stack them up and make a scalloped border. So I left the blue bits there so that I had something to attach each piece to itself. So I'm adding some tape runner along the bottom lines, and then I'm just lining up the yellow scallops so you can't see any of the blue anymore. I'm going to do that for all. I think I've got four or five. I can't count. I think I've got four, and I did leave the bottom blue scallops on that fourth one just so that I could trim it off once I actually got it onto the card. So now I've got everything attached. I'm going to use my paper trimmer, and I could have just used my scissors, but I am going through a few different bits of layers of the paper at that point. So I've trimmed that down, and I've got my little scalloped border. Now I could just decide what I was going to put it onto. I did think maybe I would add a bit more color, but actually there's a lot of color going on this page. Even though I just used a couple of black and white photos and a couple of color photos with all of those beautiful colored cards, there's a lot of color going on there. So I've just added my border to some white cardstock just to give a little bit of a resting place on the entire spread. Now, because I've got that white card, I decided that I would swap out my usual black ink, and I picked up Peach Bellini from Catherine Paula, and I'm going to use these alpha stamps from Citrus Twist. I am just stamping them off once on some scrap paper because they are a little bit sort of black and stained, and I want to make sure that the color's nice and crisp on the white card, so I'm just stamping it off on some scrap paper first. It's just kind of making sure that none of that black smudginess goes onto there, and it was actually kind of fine, but I'm glad I took the extra step. I'm using my ruler guide, and I measured how high up that scallop went so that I could stamp my alphas not just straight, but also slightly underneath the scallop. So I've measured out, it's just going to be slightly below it so that the scallops hide that text just a little bit, kind of make it look like it's all one combined card. Now I do have those black and white photos in this spread, so I did add a little bit of black ink just with the numerals there, but kept that outline so it's a little bit lighter and not quite so heavy. And you can see how the scallops fit in there. It's quite a heavy little piece of card with all of those layers of paper on there, so I'm just going to use a bit of double-sided tape, line that up to the bottom of the card and stick that down. Now also, while I was going through printing out all of those beautiful journal cards, I also went through all the kits and picked out all of the labels. You know I love a digital label, so I've added a few more to my collection. These are all perfectly matching those pretty cards. They're a slightly larger size too, so I've printed them a slightly bigger than my usual labels so that I can fit these kind of double dates in here. I've printed this one, I've stamped this one, which was kind of a darker tealy blue, and I'm going to tuck that into one of the scallops. Now, I didn't tuck it far enough because I have actually kind of adhered it down a little bit more than I thought I would. So I've just trimmed the bottom of it. I can still see that stamping, but I've just trimmed the bottom kind of portion off there so I can tuck it underneath the scallops and get that really nice kind of layered look for my title card. Now, I specifically printed less photos this week for a couple of purposes. I wanted to be able to showcase some of these beautiful cards, but also kind of wanted to tell a little bit more story through journaling this week. So I've left 3 spots for journaling, and I'm going to tell a few stories about some of the actual specific photos that are in this week. So I don't necessarily mind. Some weeks I don't have a lot of photos because I just don't have a lot of photos. And some weeks I don't have a lot of photos because I choose to put less photos in and just tell more specific stories about those particular photos, which is what I'm doing here. I've got a brand new mug. It's so pretty, and it works perfectly with this little yellow journaling card that says enjoy. But I also really loved that sort of library card looking journaling card, and to me that was more appropriate for telling the story for the photo above, which is kind of what I really wanted to tell. So there's not a huge story behind having a new mug, but there is behind Lily and Mel sitting together on the couch. So I wanted this cup photo to kind of tell its own story, and to do that I decided to fussy cut the top of that enjoy journaling card, and I'm going to use it kind of like a die cut in itself. So I've trimmed all of the yellow off the top of the word enjoy, and I did trim down my photo a little bit at the top just to give me a bit more room at the bottom. So I'm lining that all up at the bottom. I did use some smart glue from scrapbook.com so I could get all of those little pieces all joined onto my photo, which, to be fair, it glues really easily. And then I just retrimmed all of that piece back down to 3x4. Now the little side of the E was not attached to the rest of that, so I kept the bit that I had cut off so that I could make sure that I got that right back in the exact same place. The dot of the I, I'm not actually worrying so much about. I did go ahead and cut that out, but I'm just going to glue it in place where I think it goes. I totally misplaced my tweezers, so I used my scissors to help me out there, and I love how this turned out. The yellow is almost exactly the same as my mug, so it works perfectly. And so because I've left that journaling card completely blank there, I just put that straight through my typewriter and told the story of the photo above it. I decided to come back and add a little bit more pink kind of into my coffee cup photo though. So I grabbed another one of those labels, the printable labels, and an older stamp set from Citrus Twist. I was trying to find like a coffee stamp that said something about a mug. So I found this one that said mugs up, suns up, mugs up. And I stamped that fit on that little label perfectly. I'm just going to tuck that into that gap there, trim off the edge, and it just gives it a little bit more because the journaling card next to it is very simple, so I can afford to add just a little bit more detail onto the yellow one. Now for this particular spot, I had that same kind of dilemma. There were 2 journaling cards that I really loved. I know I want to tell a little story about being interviewed by Diana and Veronica for a Storytellers podcast. I took a screenshot while we were recording because Veronica was struggling with her lights and she was basically a little ghost for the whole time. So that was kind of the little story that I wanted to tell. But the yellow speech bubble card, I wasn't sure. I wanted to combine both the pink hearts and the yellow speech bubbles. I just wasn't sure which part of that speech bubble card that I wanted to use. So instead of fussy cutting it out, I did use a knife and trim it out really nicely so that I could decide between both pieces. And in the end, the yellow, the darker yellow speech bubble part didn't give me enough contrast on the other journaling card, so I ended up using the lighter border. So before I typed my journaling on there, I just used a little pencil line to make sure I was going to stay within that speech bubble. Then I could do my journaling, glue that all together, and combine 2 cards into one to make it totally my own. So I've got one more little story to tell, and I've got that green stripy card as a base, and I'm just looking through some of the other bits and pieces that I've got for how I can add my story on there, and I ended up using that yellow gingham card from the springtime kit. Again, just ran that straight through my typewriter, but instead of using the entire card, I want that green stripy piece, so I am going to trim out the little circle that's got my journaling on it, and I'm going to attach that onto my green journal card instead. Decided to add it kind of towards the bottom, so I'm going to cut the bottom piece off it, and it looks like it's kind of part of that card, but kind of a bit more dynamic because it's falling off the bottom. Now, as far as embellishment goes, I don't need to add a whole lot of embellishment onto here, but I do have a few little chipboard hearts that are almost the perfect color scheme for the cards that I've used this week. So I'm going to add a few of those on. It gets them out of my stash and just adds a little bit more color. So where I'm adding them, I'm just trying to balance out the colors that I've got on the rest of my spread. So adding a few little greens, a few little pinks, and a few little yellows, and then I can call this spread all done. Now, don't forget to check out the description box below. I have got the link for Nelly and Clem's new shop. Head over there and check out all of the fantastic goodies in the shop. There's a forum, there's blog posts, there's all sorts of stuff over there, so make sure you head over and check it out. Hey, thanks for watching today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, I'm going to leave a couple of videos here on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye.